Thanks for joining us here on 9 News Plus. I'm Klis Bianchi. Now, you may have heard by now that Sean Payton is the 19th head coach in Denver Broncos history, with the Broncos set to trade a first-round pick and a second-round pick in return for the former New Orleans Saints head man, Sean Payton. The guy who reported, of course, is right here. He's got all the scoop on everything you want to know about how and why this happened and what the Broncos will look like, perhaps under Sean Payton's leadership. He's our 9 News Broncos insider. He is Mike Klis. Mike, thanks so much for joining us. And I guess the top line takeaway, how did this happen?
Yeah, it started, the process started December 26th, which was the day Nathaniel Hackett was fired after the 51-14 Christmas Day meltdown in Los Angeles. And you just started putting the candidates together. They came up with 8 candidates. Going into the search, Greg Penner pretty much identified Jim Harbaugh and Sean Payton as the guys to beat, because both those guys have they're tough coaches. You know, they got an edge to them. And Nathaniel Hackett, as we all know, is kind of a bro hug type of guy. His style. I'm not saying that's why it didn't work out for Hackett, but that's how he was. And so they wanted more edge. They were tired of losing. They wanted someone that would, let this locker room know losing is not acceptable. And if you continue to lose, it's doomsday. Trying hard ain't enough. It's about winning. And so those two were identified rather quickly. And then after the interview of D'Amico Ryans, he emerged. He really impressed these Penner and the group, George Payton, Condoleezza Rice. And they looked at his accomplishments a little more. And, they had done some research on him before and just found out this guy's a special, unique leader going back to when he was a player. So he emerged as a top candidate at one point. Harbaugh, they did meet with Harbaugh twice, including after he had already committed to going back to Michigan. And that was the key. He committed on January 16th that he was going back to Michigan. And on January 23rd, roughly, January 22nd, I should say, Greg and his wife, Carrie, flew out to Michigan to meet with him. I don't know if there's an offer per se or not, but Jim Harbaugh again reiterated after sleeping on it, I think, that he wanted to stay in Michigan. So Harbaugh was out once and for all. D'Amico Ryans, his wife, is from Houston and has all kinds of family there. A mom, dad, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters. And so that was a big factor, I think, for D'Amico wanting to go back to Houston. He also was drafted there, played there 6 years. So there were personal ties for him to Houston. And once D'Amico, who Broncos did have, I do believe for about a day, had him as their top choice, they pivoted and started working toward Sean Payton. I'm going to say it was probably today is Wednesday, last Thursday night, Friday, they started concentrating on Sean Payton and trying to get the deal done with New Orleans. And that took some time because New Orleans initially asked for 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick. And the Broncos, after giving up 2 firsts and 2 seconds last year for Russell Wilson, they just didn't have the draft capital to give away like that. So they got it down, and basically it was 1 first-round pick. Next year they give away a second rounder, but they also get back a third. So that second rounder is really diluted. And so basically, if you wanted to do draft board values, I think the Broncos gave away probably roughly the 24th overall pick in the draft. And would you do that for a coach like Sean Payton? Ultimately, Greg Penner and the Broncos said yes.
I guess when it comes down to it, too, a little bit more, Mike, in terms of the compensation the Broncos gave up, they got that first round pick that they're giving away this year, which is obviously the main deal or the main part of the deal in the Bradley Chubb trade. So this is kind of a Bradley Chubb for Sean Payton trade. Is that a good way to think of it?
Yeah, because that's how they got that first round pick that they just traded away. Now you would like to have both Bradley Chubb and the reason why they traded Bradley Chubb, Broncos did really good because there was only one team that was given a first round pick for him, and that was the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins had the 49ers pick from another trade. So that it gets a little convoluted and complicated, but they got the pick from Miami by way of San Francisco, and it's where San Francisco finished, which was in the top four, top three actually. They had a better record than the Bengals, so the Broncos wound up with the 29th pick. The 29th pick, it's 50-50, whether you're getting a player there. You usually get a starter there, but not always a great starter. So I think the Broncos did pretty well, given where they're at. They had to get the coach right, and they had to get a coach that could get Russell Wilson right. So Sean Payton addresses all of the primary concerns, and the Broncos. I thought for what they gave up, because of the dilution, they get a third round back. I thought they did pretty well with the trade.
Well, let's speak about Russell Wilson because you mentioned that. And that's obviously, I think, going to be the key to this trade, right, Mike, is how Sean Payton works with Russell Wilson, what he's able to get out of him. What's the thinking at Dove Valley at Broncos headquarters about how Sean Payton will work with Russell Wilson? Obviously, he's got a good track record.
Yeah, basically, if Sean Payton can't get Russell Wilson going, then then they'll have to look for another quarterback. Is basically how they're looking at it. They do think, Russell Wilson had 10 really, really good years with Seattle, and there is thinking that he did not just fall off the cliff as it appeared last year. Now there was some regression in his last year or two with Seattle. So say scouts. I didn't watch him personally myself. I want to say people have said that. That he's lost a little bit athletically, which is so much part of his game. He did not. It was funny. His athleticism didn't really surface until the game was on the line in the second half of the fourth quarter. That's when we saw Russell run around, scrambling for first downs, throwing on the move, doing whatever it takes off script to try to win the game. He's still a remarkable competitor. He still throws the ball well, in my opinion. From the pocket, maybe not the most accurate, and maybe there's, vision issues because he's 5'11" over those behemoths. So I think Sean Payton will get him. He said earlier on his Fox telecast that he wanted to see Russell Wilson's greatest hits with Seattle and implement that into the offense going forward. And the greatest hits for Russell Wilson is improvisation, athleticism, throwing the ball deep, and play action. And I think you're going to see that with the offense going forward. But, Chris, one thing that Payton said in his interview with Jeff Duncan of the New Orleans newspaper was it starts with getting a running game. I think you're going to see at least 2 new starters on the offensive line next year. And you're going to see a commitment to the running game first, and then have Russell Wilson play action off that.
Okay, so it's going to be basically, maybe, Mike, the way to think of it is ownership is saying we're going to give Russell Wilson all the tools to make this right. Give him a running game, give him an offensive line. And of course, it's worth noting that last year, yes, Russell Wilson may have taken a step back, but boy, the Broncos were, to say the least, were banged up. So I think the idea here, Mike, is give Russell Wilson literally all the tools and say, figure it out, right?
Yeah. And Sean Payton runs the offense. Make no ifs, and buts about it. And Russell's coachable. He was given a lot of latitude on audibilizing at the line of scrimmage and working with the game plan. I'm sure he's still going to work with the game plan with Sean Payton. But Sean Payton has been a play caller for 15 years in New Orleans, and really, and before that, play caller for the Giants for 2 or 3 years and the Cowboys for 2 or 3 years. So he's got 20 years of NFL play calling experience. And with the Saints, they were top 9 in offense 13 out of the 15 years. The only 2 years that were exceptions were Drew Brees' last year, when Drew's was definitely struggling to hold up. He was, ready. We had one foot toward retirement. And the year after, Drew Brees, we had to go Taysom Hill. Jameis Winston got hurt in the 5th or 6th game, blew his knee out. So they went with Taysom Hill, who's a Tebow-like type of quarterback. So he's adjusted. He still went 9-8 that year in 21. So he can adjust to his talent, but this guy knows how to call plays, and Russell Wilson's going to run the play that Sean Payton calls him and calls in. And I think he's also going to integrate Russ more with the rest of the team. Russ is the star, Russ with the office, Russ with the team. I'm not sure that's going to carry on here.
Yeah, I guess, and kind of start wrapping things up here, Mike. When it comes to expectations with getting Sean Payton, having Russell Wilson year 2, are the playoffs a minimum at this point for the Broncos in 2023?
Well, there was, the good thing is there won't be that type of expectation. There were enormous expectations last year, and everybody got deflated with 5-12. It got worse, not better. So, yeah, I mean, they'll be expected to get to the playoffs. If not, Sean Payton will make other moves, make other changes. That's the whole point. He can only make, roster-wise, you generally can only make about 30% turnover on your roster. Because of the way the salary cap is, it's hard to, and the constraints there. You can't overhaul the roster in year 1. It's going to take 3 years really to overhaul the roster. You can still have success year 1. So 10-7, 11-6. Here's the deal. It looked the job looked more gargantuan when he took over the Saints in 2006. He inherited a team that was 3-13 and made him 10-6 in 1 year and won a playoff game. Now, he also acquired a quarterback named Drew Brees that same year. That's a big thing. But still, he turned around a program and lifted it to great heights right away. So I think 5-12 with Russell Wilson, yes, the Broncos can turn it around and make the playoffs if they get Russell Wilson playing like Russell Wilson again.
Okay, so that's the key. I guess finally here, Mike, I guess we still, as of 1 p.m. here on this Wednesday, still haven't gotten the official word that Sean Payton's the head coach. When do you expect this to be officially announced and perhaps him getting introduced?
Any time. The press conference, as I understand it, because there's scheduling conflicts with a couple people, not till Monday of next week is the way I understand it right now, tentatively. I expect it to be the deal to get done any minute. So I did think it would be done by now. These things are complicated. So we'll see how it all involves, because Sean Payton, among other things, what happens with a new coach is they spend all their first month, 2, 3, 4 weeks assembling their staff. And there's not 5 coaches on a coaching staff. There's 25, 26, 27. And so it's a gargantuan task for a new head coach. And I like some of the assistant coaches, that they've got right now. Hope a lot of them stay. We'll see about Evero and Vic Fangio at defensive coordinator. That's unsettled right now, but there's a chance Vic returns at defensive coordinator. But I know the Broncos also want Evero to return if Evero wants to return. So that has to be shaken out. The offensive coordinator is not as big because Sean Payton is the offensive coordinator. but still an important staff position. And then we'll see. That's the task at hand for Sean Payton first, and then evaluating the roster as it sits now will be his simultaneous task. He's going to spend a lot of hours at UC Health Training Center once he gets in, which I don't know if he's in right now. He might be, but we'll see. If he's not in today, he's in tomorrow. So he's got to get to work.
Well, Mike, you've certainly been at work for the last little while, and well, the never-ending Broncos offseason starts now for you, Mike.
I hope I'm done with head coaching searches for a while. There's been 6 in the last 10 years, and that's just you can't have a stable, successful franchise when you have that much turnover at the top. So, owner has changed, GM has changed. It's been quarterbacks every year. It's been nuts, and the Broncos hope Russell Wilson and Sean Payton are together for the next 3 years at least. That's how much guarantee that Russell Wilson has left on his contract. So that's a hope for Broncos country. We'll see if it pans out. They gotta make major strides though here in 2023.
Well, I got a sneaking feeling that we may see Sean Payton here for a little while, and that's certainly some good news. But Mike, we know you'll be around for a while. 9 News Broncos insider Mike Klis, thanks so much for joining us here today.
You got it, Chris. Enjoyed it.